Hello, graduates. We are in the midst of a unique and challenging period here at San Jose.
This is Mary Ashagani-Papazian, the current president of San Jose State University, and she is addressing the spring class of 2020 graduates. What sets this graduate recognition apart from others at San Jose State University was that it took place virtually during a major shift in the world. The graduating class of 2020 received their recognition during the COVID-19 pandemic, when schools, businesses, and other facets of everyday life were moved remotely during a statewide lockdown to reduce the spread of the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
There's a recognition of our interdependence that requires of this moment that we direct a statewide order for people to stay at home.
The lockdown itself marked a significant change in our lifetime, not only affecting students, but all levels of society.
We're talking about oppression, discrimination.
Huge disparities in how the virus has affected different ethnic groups, just to focus on that for a moment.
What stands out to me more than anything is that, I spend 22 hours of every day in my house, and I have for exactly a year now.
To document the anthropological response to COVID-19, our team of graduate and undergraduate anthropologists conducted an oral history of our department's experience of 2020 to 2021.
Well, COVID, like I imagine just about every last person in America or in the world, COVID-19 changed my work and my life in just about every way.
So my job has changed in so many different ways when it comes to COVID-19, not only professionally, but like I said, it has changed our lives as well.
COVID-19 and the fallout from that has changed my research, and it's also changed the work that I do in a number of ways.
I wasn't able to go into the field to do field research the past summer or this coming summer. And I normally direct archaeological field schools, so I will not be able to conduct a field school, and I will not be able to introduce archaeology students to actual field work.
It was difficult to get out and do observations in the field. It was difficult to recruit people to interview. All the things that we really think of as anthropology's secret sauce, things like our ability to kind of really be in the world and experience it intimately, those were undermined by the pandemic.
Because it means going into communities, it means talking to people, it means gaining trust, it means getting people's insider perspectives. And that's really, really difficult work. And that work, it's difficult under normal circumstances. And it's even more difficult when we're all sitting in our houses and we can't be making those, forming those bonds as easily in person. So.
Our students, teachers, and practitioners at SJSU were now working in a much more virtual world. Further separated from the communities, people, and spaces anthropologists often research, it became difficult to navigate and adapt to this new environment. Further, the pandemic not only affected the lives and research of our anthropological community, but the lives of the communities we work with and live in.
Really what the COVID-19 pandemic has done is it's just put a giant magnifying glass on all of the existing inequalities that were already in our society. And it's just kind of magnified what those inequalities are, and exacerbated those inequalities for sure.
Most people who may be watching this interview may think that Silicon Valley is this amazing place that has to do everything with technology and, of course, people of wealth. But there is a hidden community that people don't see, at least through the media or through what people write about.
Why? Because they might not have that infrastructure, or they might have lost their jobs. or because they're single parents, or because, the reasons X, Y, and Z.
The conclusions that people are now coming to in 2021 is that Silicon Valley really is two economies. It really is two communities. They thrive in very different ways.
And the fact that technology does exist here in Silicon Valley and is supposed to be very strong, right? Everyone is supposed to have access to that. But because of COVID-19, we all know that's not true.
From our interviews, we found that the pandemic accentuated the underlying issues anthropologists were already investigating in their research agendas and community applications, such as Silicon Valley's rampant inequality and fascination with technological solutions.
It has exposed the inequalities that were already in Silicon Valley. We already had a digital divide. We already had a housing crisis. We already had a transportation crisis. We already were having crises of access to education.
Dr. Jan English Lewick and her class, in partnership with the Alliance Innovation Lab of Silicon Valley, was studying streetscapes and autonomous vehicles prior to the lockdown.
And we were thinking that all of our projects would be around things like transportation insecurity and transportation vulnerability. And lo and behold, the pandemic hit. And one of the things that was really hit rather hard was the public transportation system. So suddenly our project pivoted to really exposing the inequalities of Silicon Valley by looking at how people who relied on public transportation, which was already kind of thin on the ground, became that much more endangered by the pandemic.
One of the major challenges of the pandemic was uncovering the experiences of those hidden communities anthropologists often study. Early in the pandemic, Drs. John Marlovitz and Roberto Gonzalez published an article in Anthropology Today that framed the emerging experience of COVID-19 for a broader audience, highlighting not only how the crisis has deepened and magnified social and economic inequalities, but the significant role anthropology plays in understanding pandemics.
We wanted to talk about all of those social issues and anthropological issues in a way that would make some sense, and while at the same time bring to the forefront the challenge that it's presenting to all of us right now, both personally and intellectually.
We began to notice that though the pandemic greatly affected how anthropologists conducted research, the types of questions we asked became much more important, especially to those within the communities we work with.
And so we started thinking about, like, what are the important questions to ask? Not, hey, we've done this before, we have all the answers. It was, based on our work in the past, what are the types of questions we have to ask?
Thinking about community and collaboration, Dr. A.J. Foss and his colleagues at the Culture and Disasters Action Network, or CADEN for short, created a set of questions with non-academic practitioners to study the cumulative effects of successive disasters in communities that have previously been impacted by disasters, to understand how they're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Using these questions, Dr. Foss and Dr. Melissa Beresford, with their applied students, collected data from students at San Jose State University on COVID-19's impact on social networks.
So the undergraduate students each went out and interviewed people virtually on Zoom. Obviously, when I say went out, I mean used their computers to go out to interview people. And so now I am working with 2 other undergraduate students to analyze that data this semester.
Some of the larger themes that we've come across in this research project are the emotional hardships that students have faced, the financial hardships that students have faced, and how they've been able to mitigate those impacts.
As anthropologists, our research often involves collaboration among many actors within a system. The ideas of community, collaboration, and adaptation drives our understanding of humanity. Built into the framework of our anthropological community, these themes allowed those we interviewed to not only face the challenges of the pandemic, but to adapt to them.
Fundamentally, if you're dealing with a situation that is stretching your abilities in terms of being able to address them, you can either try to amplify your own capability, your own variety, or you can try to dampen the external variety.
I have gone to the different testing sites, to the vaccination site, and have engaged with community members there in terms of user experience to our services and ensuring that we are addressing and eliminating as many barriers as possible for access.
The inequalities exposed by the pandemic are still affecting our lives and will continue to do so. That said, it is important to realize that this is not a retrospective story, but that the skills that anthropologists have will continue to be necessary, as what is needed to face these fundamental shifts in our world is a process of continuous adaptation and collaboration.
It's been very clear through this pandemic that anthropology and the skill sets that we learn as anthropologists are invaluable to the work that we do. We're deeply engaged in community. We know how to ask questions and we know what questions to ask to get further to understanding.
And really the strengths of anthropology is that it is so grounded. We're really working from the ground up in terms of seeing people's everyday lives and their reality on the ground.
And for me, that's always been one of the great things about anthropology, is that it allows you to kind of move in different directions. You don't necessarily stay focused in one area for your whole, 50-year career or whatever, but it gives you that flexibility to venture into different areas and explore different topics when the need arises for that.
I love the theory. I love the science. I love the intellectual aspects of what it is to be a scholar and a professor. But I'm even more interested in how you can help people apply that knowledge in practical ways.
For me, it's been a proud moment to be an applied anthropologist doing this work and knowing that I'm doing something that is making a difference in our community.
When I think back to the things that have happened this past year, I would say most of what has happened, I think, is, if not predictable, it could have been anticipated because we saw the lurking structures under the surface.
I also have to keep in mind that this impacted them differently than other communities here in the United States. So being thoughtful about that is something that I will have to keep in mind when I work with people in the future. And because even a year or two from now, where everyone's like, oh, things will be back to normal, vaccines are being distributed and everything like that, I still have to think about, well, this person I'm sitting down to do an interview with could have lost a loved one in COVID-19, and the ramifications of that for that person. So it's going to be important, I think, for not just myself, but other anthropologists, ethnographers, people in the social sciences, to keep in mind that this isn't something that's just going to be a blip in our lifetimes. It's going to have ramifications that are unforeseen right now, but we still have to do our best to anticipate and be mindful and approach them as much of an empathetic and ethical way we can.